hope you enjoyed that performance. All right. So what we're going to do is we are going to start by introducing ourselves, and just to put names to faces, even though they came up quickly. I'd like to apologize for not producing enough of a playbill for you all because, like I said, my only feedback so far has come from my mom. And she was like, I didn't get to see people's names long enough. And I was like, I'm sorry, this was the first time I did this. So, Jen, would you like to introduce yourself, or are you deep in it? And she's deep in it.
Yeah, Heidi, hang on a second. Is it still?
Quickly, I'd like to apologize. It just started again. Producing enough of a playbill for you all because, like I said,
all right, I've just found it. Sorry.
What did you find?
A completely different browser window
was open.
Open, right? So we'll trim that out.
Well, and, not live. We won't. I sure hope someone's watching. Kevin, did you see that? Thank you. Yeah. Jen, do you want to introduce yourself while you're unmuted?
Why, thank you. So I'm Jen Brown. I'm the noise-causing director of the Center for Literary Arts, and certainly grateful that all of you are here with us this evening.
And I don't know how many years Jen and I specifically have worked on the festival. Jen, you want to pop back in and tell me how long you've been the director? There's Jordan.
So I've been the director since 2016. So it's been, it's been 4 years we've been doing this.
All right. So that's how long she and I have been working on it. We've all been involved, a lot of the cast and directors over time, various intermittent times we've all worked on the festival. So I'm Heidi Gardner. I'm the festival director, and I am responsible primarily for making sure it all happens. I'm not going to say how it happens or how smoothly it happens. We just go with the flow, and we read the plays after they have been selected, and I find directors for those plays. We used to have a very tight turnaround on that. The play festival used to be in September, and so we would, especially if we were involving Frostburg State students, have a turnaround time of about 3 weeks to acquire directors and casts. So it was a little tight. So we've bumped into November, and here we are having a talkback weeks after, thanks to COVID-19 and the like. So we'll just go, and I will. We're all in different orders, I'm sure, because we've all learned how Zoom works. Bill, why don't you and Lisa introduce yourselves?
Bill Braha here, one of the 3 authors of Red Brides Again with Recycled Hood.
I'm Lisa Holt.
All right, Dennis, go.
Yeah, and I'm also one of the cavalcade of writers on Red Rides Again. And the genesis of this thing is kind of interesting because it began when Bill and I were just out of high school, and it sat on the shelf for a very long time. And as you can tell,
half a century.
Yeah, right. And Bill and Lisa pulled it off and took a look at it, and we got it up and operating. And Bill and Lisa did a tremendous job with sort of resuscitating it and getting the project up and going again.
That's so fun. I'm sure we will have more questions about that. Guy, go.
Hi, I'm Guy Newsham. I'm up in Ottawa, Canada. I wrote the play Last Rites, and I was also fortunate enough to be amongst the winners last year for a play called Making Friends, and I had the great pleasure of actually visiting Frostburg and being there for the festival in person.
That's wonderful. Yes, thank you. And that's one of the things that people who watch this on replay, that's something that we can't approximate. Is our venue is an old movie theater, and it's just such a great space. It's drafty in all the good ways, and has like lovely texture everywhere. And like I said, we cannot replicate that, but we miss our space, so we'll be happy to be back there. Kristen, go.
Hi, so I'm Kristen Evans. I wrote Birdfish, and I live in Western Maryland. And in fact, I live right across from the Rocky Gap State Park boat ramp. So I see and hear fishermen and geese, not the fish as much, but I see and hear fishermen and geese all the time.
Wow. I didn't even think about that, but I did know that you lived there. All right, so we did manage very cleanly to end up with all of our playwrights, which, like I said, is the most special thing about this talkback, because we never that I know of have had all three playwrights have a voice, especially at the talkback, but throughout the process especially. So we have that, and now we have all three directors as well. So Tim, can you introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Timothy Bambera. I'm the artistic director of the Embassy Theater that's in downtown Cumberland, which is also an old Art Deco movie house. So that's Heidi's up in Frostburg. She's talking about the Palace, and then downtown in Cumberland we have the Embassy Theater. I've been the artistic director. This is actually my first year, so we pretty much had to cancel and reinvent the entire season. And what did I have to do? Oh, I was supposed to do direct One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in May, so we had to can that, but we ended up doing a Zoom production of that in July. So I got kind of used to like working on Zoom to try to figure out how to do play. So yeah, I was really happy to get the chance to direct Guy's play, and that Heidi asked me. And this one was, I don't really feel like I directed it so much as I just asked my friend Eric if he wanted to do it.
That worked just fine.
And my friend Eric, he's an Annapolis actor who I know from, he comes up to Cumberland Theater sometimes and does shows. So that's how we met a couple years ago. So it was a lot of fun to be able to do a show with Eric, you know, a couple hundred miles away. I just got married in October, so he was here for my wedding, but I was like, oh yeah, Eric's perfect for the priest. So I called him up and he was like, yeah, let's do it. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
No problem. Andy, go.
Hi, y'all. My name's Andy Croston. I am from Cumberland originally. I've lived in New York City for about 10 years, and I'm now back to Cumberland for a while, happily so. And this is my first time being involved in the One Act Play Festival. And I got to direct Bill, Lisa, and Dennis's wonderful show, Red Rides Again. And it was a lot of fun.
Jordan.
Hello, I'm Jordan Klein. I am a local to Western Maryland. I actually am right upstairs from Heidi. I live right above her. I can feel her. We're almost in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
I directed Birdfish. I was very lucky with my cast. I know all of them. I've worked with them all. I thought it worked out very well. It was a lot of fun. Not a huge fan of the Zoom directing, but
I'm sorry. Actually, Jordan, you did a great job. And I'm just going to interrupt you to say that Jordan has some perfectionism problems, and Zoom is just not a good place for those, especially if you have some obsessive compulsive tendencies and you can't get your people to line up the way you want them to. So Jordan, let that go. Let it go.
Yeah, I'm going to let it go. We're going to talk about it so that I can let it go.
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a therapy session for those of us that did have struggles during.
Yes.
All right, great. So yeah, anyway, I feel super blessed to have all three directors and all three, well, not three playwrights, 3 and 2, 5 playwrights here with us. As far as where to start, I like to kind of recap the how things usually happen, and in this case, how they happened this year. So received the word that, I mean, and the obvious nature of the world that we were going to do this. Actually, we didn't decide that we were going to do it. We just said we're going to stop taking submissions because this is not going to happen at all the way it would normally happen. And I said, you know, can we make a show with what we have? And Jen said yes. So we reached out and immediately asked, the playwrights will remember getting some sort of correspondence from Jen that was like, are you game to like let us do something with your play? We don't know what yet. And so we're really happy that you all just came along for the ride. Then so there's an interesting thing about the One Act Play Festival, and I don't know how it was. It was always such that you were just mysteriously invited if you got to be a part of the festival. It was not auditioned. It might have been sometimes, or sometimes certain directors might have auditioned it, but it's always just been this sort of fluid thing. And that's how I understood it. So when I sort of had the right to change it or do something different with it, I was like, this kind of works. And we have built a nice little family of people who like to be a part of it if they can. And if they can't, they turn us down and we pick them up next year. And if new people want to be involved, they reach out and go, I didn't even know this happened. How can we be a part of it? And we say, which is obvious, we literally never know until we've chosen the plays what demographic we will need. We don't know whether the people that we need will be young or old or college students, or, so we just have no idea. And then we just start calling people because we're a small town. And the great thing about being a small town, and the terrible thing about being a small town, is that we all know each other. So in this case, wanted to take advantage for sure of the ability to use actors as well as directors if we wanted, people who were not local. Now, as it turned out, I would have invited Andy to direct either way, but he came back to Western Maryland, so he was close by. So it turns out all of our directors ended up being local, but we knew that we could invite cast members who were still connected to this area in some way, whether they graduated from Frostburg State or whatever. We knew we could invite them. So I made that clear to directors, and it turned out actually, Jordan, your cast wasn't all local because you had Nilsson, right? Was Nilsson the only one?
Correct.
So we kind of just the way that I chose directors, like I said, this year was I had been wanting to invite Tim to help us. Tim helped us. What did you do? Loan us your truck one year?
Yeah, I went with Jordan to get the set for the play. I forget the name of the play, but George and Kevin and who else was in that one?
Beth Hilliker.
Beth, yeah.
Yeah.
He actually stood in for George one night and read for him when rehearsal he couldn't be there at my house.
At that night.
Well,
Okay.
I'll tell you what, George was really nervous about his lines, so I did sit with George down at Mark's coffee shop for like a couple hours to try to help him learn his lines.
He's still nervous. And
He's still
over.
nervous about the play that happened 4 years ago. So this is how you all become part of our family. We just start talking about people you don't know, and then when you meet them, you'll know them, right? So George is actually works at our local Board of Education, and it was his first play ever when he did the One Act Play Festival with us. So we have a variety of people who get involved. Some people are professional theatrical performers, and some people literally are like, I want to do this. Is that okay? So the other thing is that it was a little bit easier to cast this year in that we didn't have to tell anyone that they had to learn lines. So the normal thing about our time crunch is that we have lots of actors that overcommit themselves in non-COVID times, and telling them that they need to memorize a one act, even a small one act, in a couple weeks time is something that usually scares people. But this year we didn't have to deal with that. We just said, you can learn it to whatever ability you want to, and it can be on your screen in Zoom land. So Tim came to us because he had once loaned us a truck, and I was very interested in having him be a part of the festival in some way that was not loaning us a truck, because Tim is talented and able to do more than drive our truck, which we are still very grateful for, because what normally happens is the first two plays that we perform are usually the second and third place play, and they are always staged readings. So no sets, no costumes, suggestions if you need them to portray the character, but definitely you just music stands and, wear all black and live your best life. And then the intermission happens, and then the fully fleshed out to our ability in our the embassy as a theater is much more fleshed out as a theater, and still not ideal, Tim will agree, for full productions. The Palace is even less. We don't have we don't have any wing space. There's no backstage. It's set up more as an auditorium now. So we're limited, and that's why we definitely, when we were moving set, needed to have help, because we had to bring in anything we needed. There's nothing that lives there. So that was bringing in Tim. And then, like I said, I was going to invite Andy to participate either way because I wanted to be able to take advantage of the distance and wanted Andy to be involved. We've been doing a lot of projects together and he's from this area, and it was just a nice time to be able to bring him in. Jordan is heavily relied upon for the One Act Play Festival because I brought him on board probably the first year that I worked with Jen, and he has stuck with me as a director. So we're kind of the consistent pieces, and then the moving parts happen all around us. And that works just because we can fill in those slots as needed. And usually it means Jordan ends up doing the heavy lifting as a director because I'm like, and literally because I'm like, if I have to direct one of the plays myself, it's definitely not going to be one that I also have to coordinate set for. So thank you, Jordan, for years of commitment to the One Act Play Festival. So we had some conversations about the Zoom aspect of what we were doing this year. And I guess I'm interested in hearing maybe from the playwrights, what you might have expected or what you would have expected under other circumstances, just to get us started, because we were having that conversation anyway.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm not sure how the other playwrights, how they saw their plays, but I mean, my play was not written as a Zoom play. There's a lot of invitations out there right now to write plays specifically for the Zoom platform. Mine wasn't written for Zoom. I'm not sure if the others were or weren't. Maybe they can comment on that. But I did think that it would adapt itself to Zoom fairly well. There was only 2 characters. It was a very simple single set, which was very well evoked with the backgrounds that you guys used. So from that perspective, I thought it mapped fairly well. And one thing I'll just say, Heidi, you're mentioning about how this was a rare opportunity to get all the playwrights and all the directors together in one space. I was in another meeting yesterday with the theater group in California for another play festival that I'm part of, and there was 12 playwrights there, mostly from the US, but also myself from Canada, one guy from Australia. And we made the comment that without the pandemic, this wouldn't have happened at all. We wouldn't have been together in one place in this way. And so, we can look at maybe some silver linings as to what the pandemic has led us to do these things in different formats and perhaps engage more people through a different medium that's different from being there in person, but nevertheless is perhaps more inclusive in other ways.
Yes. And I think it might change things moving forward, even when and if we get to the place where we could go back to just forgetting that Zoom existed, which we all might need for a brief period of time. We do now have the opportunity to have, I think, more people, especially people that you didn't expect to have Zoom downloaded, like an entire demographic of like little old church ladies now have Zoom. And I don't mean that to denigrate little old church ladies at all. I mean, it wasn't a demographic that ever would have needed Zoom that now needs Zoom to see their people. And so we are now in that same position as theater artists who are especially struggling in the pandemic because we have no other platform right now. But I do hope that there are things that we can continue to do. We never even videotaped any of the previous festivals, have we? Yeah, those are just into the ether, and there is beauty in that, and that is often what theater is. And I don't know that we need to record every stitch of life, but again, there are benefits to that. And I think that now we don't have any excuse not to live stream, however pitifully, at this festival. There will still be people who want to attend in person, or even if we don't live stream it, that we can provide it at the very least for the playwrights. I think of all the dozens of playwrights whose plays have been performed and they didn't get to benefit from one of the things that we don't explicitly say about the One Act Play Festival, but that playwrights find out for better or worse when we perform them, is that we essentially we're willing to like workshop it a little bit. We can't fully workshop it unless people can come and be in the room with us, but that's something we can do now. So we like giving feedback, and we like hearing feedback, and we like being able to help you make your work more substantial and more performable for more people. So that's that. did any of the rest of you have anything to say about the platform?
I thought Guy's play was just marvelously well suited for this medium. I thought it really hit the mark. And the thing with children's theater, and especially children's theater in a farce sort of mode, it needs to be physical and it needs to be interactive. But I thought that Andy and the cast really did a great job of overcoming that, and they replaced that physicality with energy. And I love the energy of everyone in the cast, and I just thought it moved along really nicely, and it captured the spirit of the play that I think I envisioned, that Bill and Lisa envisioned, that they can speak to that. But I see the challenges, because especially the play that Andy produced for us and directed for us. It's something that you kind of have to have your hands on. And this, you're standing off, and it's a more antiseptic environment. But I thought the energy was really captured.
I'm glad you said all that. I didn't want to have to say your play was really least suited for this environment, but you knew that. And I will say that when I read the plays and I read, I was like, I like this, but I'm having an oh shit moment, because I don't know if this is going to work or how it's going to work. And so Andy can attest to the fact that I was like, Andy, I got this play, and there are things I love about it, but there's a lot going on. These characters, I'm interested. I'm not sure. I had to read it a couple times, because again, when you read, it's like reading a farce. That doesn't work either. In fact, reading plays in general there's a reason that we have new ways of teaching Shakespeare, because you can't just sit with a play. It's just not the same. So I sat with that play and I was like, and in fact, I asked Andy and Jordan both at some point. I was like, I may need y'all to read this out loud to me. I don't think I'm getting all of it. Like, I'm not getting it enough to help you cast it. I'm not getting it enough to pick a director. And then I was like, Andy, take it and go. Because what I do know about this play is that it's funny. And I know we know funny people. And I know we know people who are willing to go for it. And I actually had no idea. Andy, you can talk about this a little bit if you want. I had no idea they'd go quite where they did, and I'm grateful.
Yeah,
Andy?
as am I. I agree, Dennis, with exactly what you were saying, that it's a farce, and immediately I connected with the physical comedy of it. I've done actually a lot of children's theater, and it is very physical. I mean, you can do a certain move, and kids just crack up, and so I definitely saw the challenge in that. Seeing that we are in these little squares, but I tried to rise to the occasion and just direct the folks to do as much as they can within the limitations that we're in here. And I thought Bill, especially, not you, Bill, the Bill who played the wolf in the show, I thought he did actually a really great job of like getting in and out of the camera. And like doing that sort of thing. I thought that was great. I thought they did a really good job, and they're all funny people, which really helped. They all definitely rose to the occasion, like Heidi said.
Yeah. Like I said, I just had no idea whether it was going to work or not until I got the footage and was able to handle it. And that was wonderful. Something else then just to say about the Zoom thing. And then Kristen, if you have something especially to say about Birdfish, we did end up kind of with like a couple of different ways. Like the Zoom itself, has the feature where we didn't pay for software is what I'm saying. So we didn't have the directing capabilities to there is software out there for theater now. Like they've made it, we've had time, which is why we should all be further along in this pandemic. But the arts community didn't waste any time, and they made the software necessary to be able to have a stage manager and have people be pulled off screen and for people to make entrances. And that all does exist. I didn't have honestly, it wasn't even about the money. It was about like the learning curve and how quickly I could make that work. And I knew Tim had done Zoom stuff, and I knew Andy had done Zoom stuff, and I knew Jordan would be willing to do whatever I asked him to do, which is why he's so useful and helpful to me. So that was not an issue, but we did have, Tim's play, obviously split screen. And then Jordan, everybody in Birdfish, because of the landscape as it was of the birds and the fish and the fishermen, that worked. And then Andy, I don't know whether you did it intentionally or not, but you did have the gallery, you didn't have everyone on screen at the same time, and you did have people enter and exit, and that actually was, I think all three of those were excellent choices for exactly what they needed to be, because for the children's show especially, it was necessary that we not see everyone all the time.
Yeah.
And in Birdfish, it was like the opposite. We wanted to see those reactions from Nilsson at all times, right? We wanted to see the birds reacting to what was happening and all that. So that's just something that I wanted to point out. Kristen, do you have things about the format that you questioned or worried about or were surprised by?
Well, I think from a writing perspective, to have you of course have a vision in your head of how you see it play out, and this wasn't written for Zoom, and so I had a visualization, and then as from a writer's perspective, to have it transferred to a completely different format is a fascinating process, and really important for a writer to have that happen, because you see things that work better, you see things that didn't, some lines that maybe if there'd been some physicality, or there'd been some blocking, if there'd been a light highlighting the people that you wanted to have talking, well, that's just not possible in Zoom. And so something, didn't work. But I think that what this process does of you visualize one thing, you have it taken and put in a different medium, I think it helps make your writing stronger and a little more I guess bulletproof or full, in terms of adaptability. And so there were some things that I just thought were delightful, that worked so well, that worked better than they would have in a stage. And other things that, no, maybe not so much. And I learned a lot from that. But I would say, no matter what, as a writer, it is just pure delight to see your words spoken, in any format, whether it's as a reading on live stage or Zoom, or like turn into a radio play, who knows, or a puppet show. I mean, that is a huge delight, and it's really an honor. And so I was delighted, completely delighted. And I can't thank everybody, and especially the director and the entire cast for making that happen.
That's great. And what I also heard you say was a little bit that, like, it's one thing to turn your play or your writing over to a process and understand, but to turn it over to something that it was never imagined for, is taking it so far outside of your control that you are able to criticize it and see it in a completely, like, you have to see it from outside of yourself, because it's like, it's not even yours anymore. Like, it's like, what is happening? And then, like you said, you can make adjustments or keep things or make things happen. So I will say, one of the things initially, when Jen and I were talking, was, we were like, could we, do we have time for? And the answer turned out to be no to all of those things. But we would have loved, like with Kristen's play, we very easily could have done puppetry. We could have done stop motion animation, and we considered it. And then part of it is, it is truer to our form to have the actors, but also it was a time crunch and a learning curve and all of those other things. But I mean, it's definitely something to consider as an option for some shows. Does anybody have anything else about those topics that you wanted to say?
I do.
Oh, good. I wanted to hear more from the directors about the challenges of it and what worked for you. So I'm so glad you want to talk to us.
So 1 second before we move to the directors, Bill and Lisa, what did you have so that we can transition?
We've seen a whole bunch of Zoom things in the last 8 or 9 months. Several of our things, and we've also seen a number of our plays read just a table read on Zoom. One of the biggest problems that we've had is pacing. Mm-hmm. You've got fast and slow Wi-Fi and whatever, and I don't know how Andy paced this so that it didn't die and turn into a morass of costumes and ears. But that went so remarkably well. And I also wanted to acknowledge Bill, who played the wolf, who was just all over that camera in a way that we've not seen on any Zoom production. We've never seen
That's
anybody.
Bill.
Yeah, but we've never seen anybody do that, and it made such a wonderful characterization. It
Really
made
did.
it so less static.
So one of
Yeah.
the things about Bill Dennison that I will say is that in many productions that I've been in, we have often shoehorned Bill or made a character for Bill or turned a character that was not a radio personality into a radio personality. Bill Dennison was my Mr. Bundles when we did Annie, and I was Miss Hannigan, but he also was Bert Healy. We have so like there have been, I can't even remember the amount of times that we've ended up with Bill as either the most physical comedian you've ever seen in your life. He was our pseudolist when we did Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, or a radio announcer, or we have done radio plays. And that is something that is unique to Bill. Bill is good with the Play-Doh aspect of a voice. So he can take his voice and wrap it around things. And so anyway, I think that is funny that it did help the pacing of your show incredibly. I would also point out before we move down to the directors that one of the great things about this play festival, whether it's Zoom or not, is that we always have a wide variety. We have many people who come, who are professional actors, who've been paid, who do, all the things, who live their life exclusively in the theater world. And then we have people who are community members who may be phlebotomists who are like, I think I want to learn to do plays. And that there's a richness to that and an eccentricity that is that's kind of ours. And we're proud of that, and that's fine. But I will say that also Andy had, because a lot of his people were spread out, I think that some of your people might have been even extra prepared for Zoom capabilities because they are working professionals. And so that may have aided in the pacing of that. Like you were saying, those people can take their energy is such that, yeah, it was necessary for the farce aspect. I think Jordan's cast could have done the same thing. I just think that it wasn't necessary at that level for Birdfish that it was for Red, for all the reasons we said before. Jordan, jump in. Tell us about that Zoom format.
Yes. Well, I thought I defeated the challenge. I wanted the birds on top, and then the fishermen, and then the fish, obviously, like how I would have staged it. Figured out how to do it with Zoom, and like that's how it showed up on my screen. That's how I recorded it. And then once I sent it to Heidi and watched it, it appeared how you saw it. Because I couldn't control that, and I like to control things. So that really got me flustered. But after I watched it, I was okay with how it ended up because it was just the fishermen that they split up. I am the director that likes to use people who have never done a play before. I like to give everyone the opportunity. I like especially to use them on one acts, because if you're going to jump into this, one act is much easier to learn than two. And that's usually how I rope newbies in. It should be one act, it's not hard at all. And I always lie and tell them they don't have as many lines as they do, which is a terrible thing to do, but it always seems to work out. I have directed many in the past, and this was definitely one of the most like upbeat and enjoyable ones for me. I really was crushed that I couldn't stage it. Maybe I still can someday.
I think we know the playwright.
Yeah, I think so.
And we talked to her about that.
I definitely wanted to do puppets whenever Heidi first gave it to me and I read it, and I was like, we could do this on Zoom. But I would have had to have made the puppets myself.
Pause still, Jordan was also actually working on another show that involved puppets at the time, and you might have jumped off the Clariesville Bridge if we had made you do puppets twice.
I'll admit, Heidi was correct. I am a little OCD. So I would have had to have made everything myself and mail it out. Well, I was directing a show a week before I started on this. So I was kind of behind. I didn't even have everyone in the cast yet. So I kind of nixed the puppet idea. Wanted to, have everyone with a perfect background. Not everyone was able to do that with their computer, I guess. So like there were things I definitely would have changed, and like the pacing was a big thing for me, but I think it was the Wi-Fi, because sometimes like I could see that they, even if they weren't talking, I could see that Nilsson was frozen or Denise was frozen for a second. Like I could tell that that was interrupting things, and that drove me a little nuts. But overall, I was very happy and pleased, and I thought the actors did a great job. But yeah, Zoom plays are a challenge, and I'm glad that I did it, and I will do it again, of course, because pandemic. But yeah, I'm happy with it. But I do want to do it for real.
Andy, did you struggle at all? How did it work for you in terms of logistics?
Yeah, I definitely made some choices that I think helped the pacing overall. You're talking a little bit earlier about the entrances and exits, and I thought that was definitely a necessity with Red, to get people on and off the screen. I think that helped with some of the pacing, and also I told the cast, you really have to anticipate your line. You have to kind of be one step ahead of it, so you got to get those pickups and those cues and almost jump on top of the other person's line because of that lag that there just is in Zoom. And they did that. They did really well. And I think, going back to what you guys were talking about with Bill, the amazing Bill, I kind of directed him. I told him I want you to be like the master of ceremonies, and really be the one who is talking to the audience and, getting right up in there, like this. And he did that really well. And because I envisioned it, if it was a stage production, he'd be the one talking to the kids. The wolf would be the one kind of narrating the show. And so he really delivered with that. And I thought that he was splendid. But yeah, I mean, it is challenging on Zoom, but you just work with what you have. In terms of the backgrounds, before we jumped on this, I was telling Heidi I didn't actually want anyone to have a background because I wanted to just do the costumes and sort of a plain wall. And then some of the folks jumped in and was like, well, I have this and it's working. And I said, great, listen, I don't want to rain on your parade. And then it became a challenge for some of them. The green screen wasn't working. We actually did try it once a couple of the actors showed up with their backgrounds. I said, all right, we'll go ahead and try it. And then a couple of people just couldn't get their green screen to work. It's just a technical thing. So the ones that had it, I thought it worked well for Red and Granny, being that they are the ones sort of in the house and in the garden. So they had the most colorful, fun stuff. And I thought that was fun.
Well, I was telling before we actually hit live on the live and before Andy even entered, I was talking to Bill and Lisa and Dennis about that. And I was saying that the people that we chose fit the aesthetic of like, we're just going to try this. And if it doesn't work, I'll make it work. So I think you had the advantage of that momentum. And actually I found it endearing. Things that normally are like, I mean, it's obvious when someone has a Zoom screen. So what I was saying was, if you're trying to make something super slick, you're always going to have that moment where the person is like covered by half of their background. Right. And normally that would be like, oh, why are they even using this Zoom screen? Like, just quit it, people. I don't need to see the ocean behind you. Just look at my nightstand. Like I sometimes have that with Zoom. Yeah, and with this play, like it was actually, it's like they embraced it so much it became part of it. So if Chloe's face was partially covered by a piece of flour, I thought it was hilarious.
I was gonna say it worked for Granny because she was crazy to begin with. She didn't know where she was.
So I was saying that when I read the play and I knew that we weren't gonna have the physicality, I was like, well, you know what we can give it? Crafty. We can give it kitsch and crafty, and I don't know anybody to help me do that better than Andy Croston. We didn't have enough glitter though, Andy. Andy and I usually have a lot of glitter.
We can always add more glitter.
More glitter, make sure.
Yeah, hats off to the actors, like you said, Heidi. I think a lot of my folks are professional working actors, and I'm so thankful they decided to do this. I mean, Kai White is normally in New York City. She was in Virginia at the moment. She played Red. Chloe is in Brooklyn. Danny is in New York City. you know, I mean, a lot, and Amy's in Pittsburgh. I mean, really, oh, Bill is in Baltimore. Really, it was like,
it was almost
So-
everybody. I mean, Brittany just had a baby,
And
so
Brittany
she's
had a
just
baby.
she's just, you know, we had a variety.
but they were really, really wonderful.
Yeah. So Tim, tell us, I mean, you had the most, so as far as Zoom goes, it's like I said, you chose the simple, like you knew how to do it. It was done, it was clean. And your play also was the most, I was going to say authentic, but I don't mean authentic. I mean familiar to us because of the tone of the play. Number one, Jordan, you missed earlier. I was discussing how typically our plays tend toward the darker side of life, much more like brooding and thoughtful and philosophical. And so for us to have had two plays that were also about life and the environment, and I mean they had all that, but with levity, was a blessing this year, number one, but also very unusual for us. So Tim had the one that probably had the most familiar one act play festival vibe, so people weren't like immediately like, whoa, this is different, so that helps. But Tim, tell us a little bit, if anything, about what you chose, and if you want to, you can tell us about your learning curve with Zoom, because you did do a couple of plays pretty successfully, I thought, with Zoom this year, right?
Yeah, I like I said, I did Cuckoo's Nest back in July, and what I found with that was that I had to play one of the characters in it. I actually had a stage manager, so kind of like what Andy was doing. It's really helpful to have another person just completely off screen that's like entering, exiting. And when you have a big cast like that, it makes it really clean too, to not have like a million people on screen. I think I watched like one of the first Zoom things I watched was a Midsummer's Night Dream production, which had everybody on screen, and I was like, this is giving me a headache.
Nope.
It was a good show. Like, I knew some people in the show, and I appreciate their performances, but it's just really kind of hard to like bounce around, and after a while your head gets fatigued because your eyes and your ears are just moving around so much. With Eric though, I mean, what the most challenging thing I think for us is, because you know, we're friends in real life and we're pretty good friends, and Eric's lived with me a couple of times when he's come up to Cumberland, and we've done a bunch of shows together, and you know, I just missed having that actual physical connection with him in a room. Guy wrote an awesome script, you know, to do in 30 minutes. So we were talking about, like, you know, if we would have been happy to have, like, as long as we had our COVID tests, like go in a garage and film this thing together. But it was, you know, there was this one scene that we really worked. Guy gave us a note about when we needed to see that the priest had something on his conscience. John had you know, he had seen something, but it's not really. It's not. There's no real, like. We had to see Eric listening to me interpret and, you know, feeling guilty about something, and present that all back to me on screen. And it's difficult when you're like, you know, your eyes are all over the place and you're not exactly sure how to focus. If you're in a room together, it's just like, oh yeah, okay, we just focus on each other, and that's how we do this, and listen to each other, and that's how we get a good conflict going and get a good play going. So yeah, we'd be more than happy to do this at some point live, or even in the same room together. But other than that, I mean, the thing I really liked about doing Guy's play was that there's all these funny bits in this really, you know, serious play. I mean, Eric and I are huge Star Wars nerds. I got Star Wars stuff on my shelf back there. So like, it was kind of like, and Eric and I both really like dark stuff. You know, he's a big Hannibal fan, and like, it was kind of like the perfect play for us to get together on it and explore. I also really, really like that it has an open ending. We didn't have to like stage any lethal injections or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like, you don't know.
The needle enters the screen from the
Maybe
side.
the governor would call. Maybe the governor would call. You never know. I think if I had had a little bit more time, maybe I would have gotten a stage manager to do something with like a clock. Because I think that's something that might be important on stage, to just like, because it happens in real time. You know, it's like it's 10 minutes, and I'm gonna die in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really I think that hey, I hope we did a service for Zoom. It was something that was definitely could handle. And then I threw in that what did I use? Down in the Hole. I love that Tom Waits version for the intro. Just to kind of, I just like to kind of play something to get a play started, I guess, to kind of set the mood.
I didn't request that, and I didn't tell you not to do it, and it was fine that you did that, and it did work perfectly. One of the things that I didn't discuss, but
on copyrights.
I mean, it always gives you that for like certain countries. So yeah, I do still occasionally. It does. They do definitely. It does do that. So that would have been the reason. That's actually the reason that I didn't choose music, because normally live, what I do is I have a pre-show playlist that I put way too much time into because I'm a nerd, and then it usually, whatever the last thing is, goes into the play, and then Under the Curtain Call comes out of that and into the next play. Like, it's very subtle. Probably no one notices but me and the people that have been at tech rehearsals, when I'm like, can you wait until the music does? And there's music. And I'm like, yes, there's music. So actually, I really appreciated that you did that, because it makes me feel like what we normally do is that's what should be happening. Like, yes, in a theater, there would have been that lead in, and then the exit music, and then the same. So that is what we normally do. And the reason I didn't do it was because of copyright, but you did not harm anything, or I would have asked you to remove it. I mean, like, I would have found a way. But
I'll send Tom Waits a check. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's good. I think it was like, Argentina is not going to play your video. And I'm like, cool. Sorry, Argentina. But yeah, so it occasionally gets salty about things like that. But no, we usually do music. There was something that you said that I was gonna bring up. I don't recall now. Jen, how are we on time while we're paused?
You've got about 12 minutes until 8.
Okay.
So maybe a few more questions and then we could wrap up.
Yeah, I don't have any pressing things. Are there things that you came wondering or really just wanting to talk about a particular actor, character?
Well, I have a question for Tim, and maybe picking up on something you said earlier, Heidi. I mean, since Tim has done some other plays on Zoom in his professional life at Cumberland as well, depending on how long this goes on for, or if this now becomes part of what theatre is in the future, regardless, how do we make sure that what is on Zoom is theatre and not film? I mean, do we have to differentiate between those two, and how do we do that?
So, for the purposes of the festival, we filmed it, but we've actually live streamed some stuff. So, the last show I did over the summer, that was completely live. So if something messed up, it messed up. If somebody lagged out, it lagged out. That's a great question. Yeah, and I mean, like for what we had to do, we had to film it. Now, filming it was kind of tricky though too, because like you know, you had to do it all in one take anyway. So.
Can I just piggyback off of that guy? I mean, I think it is both and neither. I think it is neither film or theater, and it is also both film and theater. I mean, it is this new hybrid that we are all learning about as we go, and it's yeah, I think it's just really interesting, and I think, you know, we just continue to be creative and we continue to learn about it and rise to the occasion.
I will bring up that
magic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will bring up that it is also has been an ongoing question regardless of the pandemic. So for example, the filming of Hamilton and it being released as a film by Disney, there's a current argument, I think, between the unions about whether when theater performances are videotaped and then released, are those people SAG people or are they AEA people? So there's actually a huge kind of issue happening regarding that. And it has only come up since the pandemic, because before it was few and far between. I mean, I personally love a good, like, sit the camera down and just let me watch the dang show, because I watched, like, I can't remember, one of the National Theater things, maybe it was One Man, Two Governors, which I had seen live, and then they were like always like zooming in, and I was like, get that camera out of the stage, like, that's not theater to me. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, and I think it is an ongoing question. And I mean, the people who care about where the money goes are probably the ones who are going to decide for themselves what the answer is. But for those of us who are making theater, it'll be something different. And I think what Andy said is probably true, is that it's not the same. It's not film and it's not theater. So I don't know. Someone out there may have coined something, but
Well, and what you said was exactly the problem with the Les Miserables movie. If you watched it, is it was all up in everybody's face. You got a great look at Hugh Jackman's nostrils, but you couldn't see what was going on around.
Oh, you mean and that was a film. That wasn't like they didn't do it on a stage. Yeah.
And it just didn't work. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it didn't do the theater medium justice.
No. At least in that case, it wasn't pretending to be theater. It was just maybe a bad movie.
But I mean, this is a theater piece, regardless of what you do.
Right. But I mean, as far as adaptations go, yeah, I mean, like, it wasn't pretending. I don't prefer it either, though. I get mad watching So You Think You Can Dance and some of those. I'm like, you know, I don't need to see this person's toe right now. I'd like to know whether their hips are aligned. But that's just me being, again, nerdy about that sort of thing. But that's who we are. We in this group care a lot about the medium and what happens to it. So I'm grateful that we're having the conversation. And I'm interested. We'll look elsewhere to what other people are saying who are doing it even more. Anybody else?
I have a question for Jordan or any of the directors. From your experiences directing reading on Zoom, what are your recommendations for Playwrights?
For the pandemic to end.
Playwrights have a lot of control over that. They do.
I think yours worked very well. It would have worked better if, like, the positioning, like I had planned, would have worked. I know I keep bringing this up, but I think that would have helped also. And like Andy said, like, you just have to be a line ahead. Like, your actors just have to say their lines sooner than what they actually would on stage. I think that would have been the biggest thing that I would have liked to have changed or encouraged for my actors to do. But yeah, anyone else want to chime in? You probably have more useful things to say.
And specifically with regard, like, what you would recommend, like a playwright writing for, if, you know, we were to write for Zoom, like what did you find worked, what didn't, what, if we had been workshopping it, the sorts of things that you were like, oh, if we had the playwright here, I really would have liked to change this. If there's anything specific that comes to mind that we could learn from.
I wouldn't have changed anything. I was grateful to my actors that they took the initiative to gather props themselves, like the pie, and like my gentleman had what are those called? Fishing poles, rods, whatever. And like the hooks and everything. Obviously, I'm not a fisherman. I'm more of a goose. But I think that definitely helped. So like, I guess writing in the future, if you added things that were everyday items so that actors could use props themselves, I thought that, at least in this piece, because of the apple pie, like, that was a big deal. And the hooks, and I wish I could have had hooks down in front of the fish. Like, if I was more technical, maybe that's what you need a director who knows what the hell they're doing on Zoom and on a computer.
Or, I mean, again, if this were the second time, so I'm not an editor. I've never edited film or video in my life. I taught myself to do it to the extent that I needed to. But one of the things that I learned in doing that was, like, so Tim had mentioned the same thing. He said, oh, if I'd had a stage manager or something, I could have put a clock in there. And I'm like, actually, I could have done that in post-production. it just would have taken a lot of.
Yeah, like I wanted bubbles. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to start with bubbles, and I wanted to hear wings flapping and like the reeling of the hook. I don't know how to do that, so I just made sure the apple pie was really cool.
And those are things that like are possible, and they're super easy for people who already know how to do those things.
Right.
And I could have probably learned, but I didn't have the amount of time I needed. But I know enough now that like if I were like re-editing this, I could put in a clock. I could put in bubbles. Like, so yeah, so there are things, there's advantages that where if we are stuck in a position where we continue to do a significant portion of theater online, that our people who would be doing technical things for us backstage would reroute those skills to video production. You know, your sound engineers may also be able to learn like a video program much quicker than me. So I think it's more about the community gathering resources and skills. Playwrights are still kind of in the same position, but it's interesting though that you, I made sure everyone knew they could contact you if they needed to. And Birdfish was the one from the beginning that I was like, if something needed to be changed, I'm pretty sure Kristen would like figure it out. But turned out that it was kind of, one of the things about creativity is that like the most creative things happen because of constraints, right? Like the more boundaries you give, the more creative people become to escape those boundaries. So to some extent, it's like you would have sacrificed some creativity if you were willing to move the boundary. So I don't know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, this particular go round. I don't know, do any of the other playwrights have ideas about like what they've changed, or have any of you started writing for a virtual platform or thought about it?
We have done a couple of things to take existing plays and remove some of the stage directions and things like that. But what I think is important is to have a sense of continuity in that. We had one production on Zoom where one of the characters was handing something to another character, and they were wonderful in making the motions, and then the next person would take it, even though they were probably 200 miles apart. So there's that. And I would also encourage playwrights to encourage the actors and such of more motion, more realizing that a camera sitting on your computer is not only a capture of your face. It it goes back to Bill Dennison.
We were watching a Zoom production one night where they were reading the stage directions, and it was a couple in a restaurant and a waitress. And the stage directions would be, and the waitress goes to get something, and we're going, get up, just sit
Right.
there. It just, there was no reason to not add the motion, even if it shows an empty chair, get up and leave.
Right. And that's something we actually deal with a good bit in the One Act Play Festival, because to some extent, again, we had an advantage in that we are used to staging readings where, like I said, there's not always props, but it's unnatural as an actor. I was in, what was the one that I did with Luann? I was in one where I was a photographer, and I was visiting another woman, and like there were times when it was clear that the motion just wasn't necessary. I didn't need to leave the room. But there were also then moments, especially where what you're saying, like when the motion that you have has an effect on your fellow actor, like getting up and leaving the table or reaching for something that they have, like it doesn't make sense to not do that, because it breaks down the emotional connection, which is something Tim was bringing up, which is like super hard to do this already. Like make it easier on yourself by, even if you have to force it at first, incorporating those things.
Yeah, well, then
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you adjust it as a director, and then they all move. Like they all were like looking in the correct direction, handing each other the pie back and forth. You could see them fighting with it, and then they all moved. But luckily, like I said, it was just the fishermen for us. But I totally agree. Like that's something I should have said to my actors too. Everything needs to be 10 times bigger because it is just this little box, like, but they couldn't move because of those stupid backgrounds. Not that they're stupid, but because like every time you move, it like covers your face.
It does
you know what I
sometimes
mean?
do that. Yeah, it's
like-
so it's slow movement. So
Yeah.
the background comes with you.
Yeah, but I definitely agree with
One
them.
of your birds was awesome. He was all over it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Nilsson didn't mess around.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
all great, but Nilsson, he committed. He had like a mohawk.
Right. And also never let down. Like it didn't matter that like he wasn't in the action at the moment. Like and that goes like, I mean, just that he was one of the people that over the whole show was one that was like there with you the whole time. Exactly. Tim, were you going to say something earlier?
I was going to say, sorry.
There's a comment on YouTube saying that's something I noticed. The actors filled the dead space of being on Zoom, but not in person by staying in character, even while their window was minimized or not the focus, which is pretty much what you were just saying, Heidi.
Right.
Sorry.
Good.
Tim.
No, that's great.
To go ahead, just to kind of tag on everybody else's comments and kind of like what Andy was talking about, how this is something new. You know, we're in a box, right? So there's only so much you can do in the box. And the acting, like if we had to do this for another, like God forbid, 2 or 3 years, acting classes would completely change because it's all from up now. So it's now about my facial expressions. And then also it's all about like all the cool tricks I can pull whilst on Zoom. So if I hand you that, and you catch it, you know,
right.
You know, if we had, that's the choreography of it, especially if you can do that with a bigger cast. But I think that the whole style of just trying to do a Zoom production is it's different than filming it. You know, it's like if you were just making a movie out of it because you are in the box. And it's all about what you can do in the box. So if you can make a background, if you can bring a prop in, you know, you have to, if you're a physical actor, you got to put it all neck up pretty much. So I don't know. I got, when I was a younger actor, I got a lot of critiques from acting teachers about like, you know, using my hands too much. And I had an acting teacher like make me tape my hands to my legs one time. So I can't use my hands too much at all on Zoom, or you'll never see me. So yeah, it's definitely like this new thing that everybody's figuring out. But I mean, the cool thing is like we're all committed theater artists, so we will figure out a way to make it work. You know, like we'll play around with it until we get it.
I just to piggyback Tim, something small that goes a long way in these productions, and I don't know if there's a way to figure this out on Zoom yet, as Jordan knows, because you don't know where the boxes are going to look like in the other person's screen. But I've done some other productions where you can figure that out, and if you can figure it out, just like talking to your fellow actors by turning your head and knowing what side they're going to be on, or like up here, you know, basically live your Brady Bunch fantasy and just pretend you're in the Brady Bunch.
Exactly what it is.
And again, there is software for that. Like there is a function, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's a functional Zoom-esque software where you have the ability to position people and do all those things. And then there's the, and again, it gets into the line between theater and film or whatever's in between. It's like if you were setting up parameters for, say, like I don't know, we watch these cooking shows and they're all like, you have to use this ingredient and do this thing. And if you did that for Zoom, you know, there might be two different categories. One where you can leave your chair and someone can follow you with a camera because you have someone else in the room. But in reality, in lockdown, most of us were alone in a room. And so then you really are tied to what you can do with what you can reach. And so I feel like those are almost two separate kinds of show. One where you are stationary and only seen from the chest up, and one where you have larger capabilities. So I mean, it's definitely it's interesting. And I know these conversations have to be happening elsewhere. So now I'm going to have to like plug into them. The only other Zoom thing that I did, I didn't do it live. I recorded to be part of a musical review, and I was given my sheet music and told what side my duet partner was going to be on. And I didn't hear it. I didn't hear or meet my duet partner until it previewed like months later. And I was like, oh, we sound kind of good together. But also, like, I mean, it was just a surprise because it was a totally different thing. Like, I wasn't singing with someone, but I didn't know where he was going to be. So that was something that someone had just mentioned, Andy had just mentioned, where it's like, you know, if you have that, that does help. We are closing in on a wrap up. So if people have final thoughts or questions.
So just a quick remark that I would make is that, you know, I'm always concerned about access, right, with audience and what their experience is. And, you know, the Zoom One Act Playfest has been great because we have been able to have audiences from different places, right, not from Frostburg, but also in a much more particular way, you know, audiences who have vision impairments or hearing impairments, you know, those audience members are more able to participate in the One Act Playfest than maybe they have been in the past. And that's something that I've been really grateful for this year. And if there's a silver lining, I think that's an especially good one for us.
And that we will keep that moving forward. And that's, I've seen that conversation in communities online as well, that it's not that people are, I mean, it's kind of sad that we acted like that was such a great, that accessibility was so insurmountable. And yet we've all adapted now, and hopefully more people will keep those accessibility functions. I wondered about that too. I know that there's the auto thing on YouTube as far as captioning. And I was thinking about that when I was editing. I was like, there was probably more that I could have done to make better captions. And if we were doing a production with a longer lead time, that I would do that. Do other people have final thoughts?
I have just a question for Heidi and Jen. What's the relationship of Frostburg Center for the Literary Arts and Theater?
Theater in the community or theater at the university?
Wherever this came from.
Oh, so I mean, Jen can speak more to like now. So this didn't originate. This kind of, I don't want it to sound controversial, but this festival, I don't remember from whence the idea originated, but I know that it was offered to the Frostburg State Theater Department and they couldn't take it on or didn't want to take it on. And so there used to be a theater company that I was on the board of that actually produced the very first one. So a community theater actually produced the first One Act Play Festival. I don't know what year it got put onto the Center for Literary Arts. Jen, do you know when it transferred over? I'm sure it was during.
I don't know that history.
Okay.
I know that it was right during I would expect during the run of the previous director, but possibly even before that.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Did the theater department ever produce any of them? I'm not sure. I feel like maybe they did for a year and then it came back to us. We don't know for sure. I think well, because there wasn't really a place for it in terms of writing. It makes sense that it be with the Center for Literary Arts now that we have one. But I don't know that the Center for Literary Arts did not exist when the Play Festival started. So that's helpful. So when the Play Festival started, we have a couple of local. We have many local playwrights and local photographers and people who work in film. And so I can't remember which of those people the original idea was connected to, but it definitely was produced at first by a local theater group and then produced, I believe, at least 1 or 2 years by the theater department. And then once the Center for Literary Arts was established, it definitely makes sense as a write-in competition for it to live there. And what we try to do as an entity that is the One Act Play Festival is that with the outreach that Center for Literary Arts endeavors to have in the community. So the Center for Literary Arts, for those of you that have not been to Frostburg, is actually currently situated on Main Street and is not on the majority of campus. So it is actually embedded in the community in a way. And so a lot of, Jen can speak more to this, but a lot of the work that is done, it's a great outreach for the university into the community. And so that's been our focus all along, is to maintain a relationship between the community and the college and the theater department whenever we can. We definitely pulled in some great alums of the Frostburg Theater Department this year. We, in the past times, I think it was Philip was a theater, he was actually the like technical person in the theater department in previous years, and we roped him into acting and
I
directing in
used it
plays.
for Guy's show last year.
Exactly. He was in Guy's production last year, Philip Schurter. He's not at Frostburg this year, but yeah, so again, we like to make community connections and yet put a twist on it. So, you know, we get people involved wherever we can. So I think that that's the goal. So it's a very like tangled web. I don't know how else to describe it. So, but the clean answer is that the Center for Literary Arts now has hold of the festival because of the writing element, and we just do our best to include students and local actors and non-actors whenever we can. Jen, did you have anything to add?
No, I think you handled that very well. We do hope to be a kind of a hub between the campus and the community, and we have this great little jewel of this festival that gets its tentacles into all sorts of different directions, with, you know, alumni and current students and community members and people who've never thought about acting before. So we've just been really fortunate, and a lot of that comes down to Heidi's connections. You know, recently, I think that being able to kind of reach out to people whom I don't have contacts with, and it definitely has enriched the festival.
This tends to be very, oh, sorry.
Oh no, we have a note here that at least 2012 is the earliest CLA one-act play festival.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that goes with the trajectory. Like I said, so it was in one place. And then I just think it definitely makes sense as a writing competition. And then the performance aspect is sort of ancillary to that. Important, obviously. And the nice thing about it is that it's weird that we're like very public right at the moment. Like anyone can watch this video, anyone can watch the plays, which is wonderful. But we're used to it being this like, it's not that you don't know about it. We tell people about it. It's just that the right people show up on the right years. I don't know how to describe it, as it's just this little place where people wander in and become regulars, or they get brought in and are like, how did I not know about this? So, I mean, that's the other good thing about, even if this is just 1 year, hopefully this is just 1 year that we're, and you know, that we are solely online, that we hope that people know that we're there, because there's lots of seats in the Palace Theater. We can fit lots more people. Parting thoughts before we go? It's been so wonderful to have everybody from this production end into the room. And we'll stay in touch, right?
Yes, thank you for asking me to do it. And Bill, Lisa, Dennis, lovely to meet you guys. Thank you for allowing me to do your show.
Great to meet you too, and thanks for the opportunity. It's really been an interesting, a fascinating process.
Yes, make more plays, tell your friends. I mean, more submissions are great. More submissions just mean we get more readers and have more groups of plays to read through. That process wasn't quite the way it usually is this year, but yeah, we have a process for doing that, and we can bear all that the world will give us. So yeah, we have had submissions from pretty international. Jen can speak. Jen, where have we had submissions from before?
Well, in addition to Guy's submissions from Canada, we have had submissions from Israel. Shoot. I forget what else. I know we had an Israeli submission.
Yeah, I just remember Jen one day was like, so we've had these submissions from here and here and here. And I'm like, It's just whoever happens upon our little website. So we're hoping that can reach a little further. So I hope that all of you will submit again. Or if I don't know how fast the writing process is for you, if you can tell your friends, get more submissions. And I'm sure that all of us here will be back in some way. That's usually how it works. Some year, some way, we all end up back at the One Act Play Festival. So thank you all for coming.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. And Tim and Eric, thank you for all the great work you did on my play. And I mean, this festival has been such a great boost to encourage my writing personally. So thank you very much for that.
Well, you are welcome.
I feel the same way. Thank you for all that you have done to put it together, especially this year. Thank you, Jordan, for the fantastic direction and all the actors. And it's great to meet the other playwrights and directors. So thanks for making this happen too.
Absolutely. You all have a great night.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.